Hey, what is up, guys? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Blake Benz Podcast. Excited for our episode today. I have a very quick and dirty episode, nothing too long, but extremely practical. And this is probably going to be, I try to, and just in general, I'm an encourager at heart, and so I try to be encouraging and aspirational for people that I work with. But also, a lot of what I do is very, I don't say quick and dirty. It's just very. I don't know. It's not gritty. It's just very practical, and sometimes it is very nitty gritty, and sometimes it is in the weeds with people that I work with. And I can't remember if I've told this story or not, but I was working with a group of people a few weeks ago, and they asked the question, as a motivational person, how do you stay so positive? And I said, well, I think that would be definitely there would be someone misunderstanding who I am, because I do try to be very motivational and empowering and positive to people that I work with. However, sometimes my conversations with people, especially people that I'm coaching, become very negative, and they become very harsh, and they become very direct. And it's never intentionally to dominate someone or stroke my ego or to make someone feel stupid. It's just that some people aren't great listeners, or they only understand through very direct communication, right? And so sometimes you have to simply tell the person who's hired you, who's paid you, hey, you are a terrible boss. Hey, you're thinking about this all wrong. Hey, that your approach here is you're not treating your employees well. You're not stewarding this well. Hey, you have a toxic culture, hey, you've totally gone the wrong way on this. I mean, and obviously I'm never trying to break someone down before I build them up. I mean, I'm all for people who have, the appetite to grow and who want to learn. But I was answering this question to the person who said, how do you stay so motivational? I said, really, you have to keep in mind I'm a coach, right? And so I'm not a motivational speaker, I'm a coach. And so I was thinking about that because today I want to talk about something that's very practical and very nitty-gritty and very in the weeds. And it's very much not inspirational or motivational, but it is very tactical and purposeful, especially if you are someone who you have ever wanted to start your business, or maybe you've already started it and you're thinking about, why is this thing not growing? Why is this thing not actually going on to be successful? And this topic of conversation today that I have for you, it's been born out of the last several weeks of working with a lot of entrepreneurs. Typically what I do for a living is I spend a portion of my time working with people that I'm trying to sell to. And so these are people who I envision them as buyers. I know that they're going to need help for their business. And so I'm trying to sell my services to them to help grow their business. And then there's other people, because I do this because I genuinely love doing it. I genuinely love people. I love helping people. I love making people successful. I really feel like there's no greater calling in life than to see someone else successful and to have played a role in that. Because I'm addicted to that, I spend also a lot of my time just giving free advice to people. Part of that is it's actually selfish in that I do that it is sort of this risk-free environment where I give free advice, and then judging on the outcome, for me, it's sort of like, it's like getting my practice shots in. Right? It's like before the big game, getting your practice shots in, and you're working on your technique. You're improving your technique. You're trying to make sure that what you say is actually good advice. And so I'll give someone some advice. A lot of times I'll do it on public forums like Reddit. And then later in the day or the next day, I'll circle back, I'll look at people's response to my response to see if anyone's saying, wow, you are a huge idiot and no one should hire you, or if people are saying you're really smart and you know what you're talking about, right? And so I'm doing that constantly because I'm always trying to improve myself, but I'm also trying to genuinely help people because I love helping people. Well, I've continuously keep running into this problem with entrepreneurs, and especially people who have fresh startups. And actually, as I feel like I'm kind of like this broken record because I keep talking about the same topic. And then as I started doing research about it, I actually found out today that 42% of businesses will fail because of this reason. Now, I talked maybe a couple of months ago on a previous episode about knowing your value and like understanding how to communicate it, how do you assert it. Part of that was motivational. It was like, you are a valuable person. You have value. You're not valueless. Despite the flaws that you see in yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, despite those flaws, there's actually probably a lot more that's great about you than that sucks about you, right? And so part of that message was to encourage people to understand that value. The other part of it, though, was very strategic in understanding that people's perception of your value, it's the outcome of how much you're asserting that value to them. So a good way to think of this, I was at a meeting this morning, and it was a networking event, and every person had an opportunity to share a little bit about their business. And so despite the fact if I'm a great speaker or a poor speaker, I remember thinking before I stood up, I want people to know that I really believe in my business and I'm worth listening to. And so I shot up, was very energetic. I said, this is what we do. This is why it's important. This is why it's awesome. This is why I love it. And then I sat back down. Now, again, I don't know how great of a speaker I am, but we had another guy who he stood up and talked for maybe about 4 seconds. He kind of looked at the ground the whole time and kind of shrugged his shoulders and was like, yeah, pay for my services if you want it, I guess. And then he sat down, and I thought, man, this person would really be served well by an encouragement of you have to communicate your value to people. Otherwise, they will actually assume you are valueless, right? It's like you can be an open book sometimes, and people will assume your value because of what you're actually communicating to them. I think that's why there's actually a lot of power in the expression of fake it till you make it, right? I mean, when we all fake it till we make it, the reason we end up making it is because people believe we're making it. They believe that we're actually doing it right. And so in keeping that in mind, I know I've talked about that topic. I want to come back to that, but I want to go a different direction because, again, I'm seeing something that it's a consistent problem that I'm seeing in the entrepreneurship world. And apparently it's not just me. It's not just my own bias of seeing this over and over again. But again, 42% of businesses are going to fail because of this. And so let's unpack this statistic a little bit. 42% of all businesses are going to fail because these businesses are going to offer something that no one wants. Say it again. 42% of businesses are going to fail because they're going to offer something that nobody wants. And I love the expression, the customer is always right. But I've noticed that I didn't know this until this last year, but often when we think about the expression, the customer is always right, we think of it from a customer service standpoint. And you could probably even think about the really obnoxious customer who's actually recited that to you. They've repeated it to your face, especially when they're being just totally obstinate. They say, hey, I'm supposed to be always right? And you're thinking, no, you're totally wrong. In fact, I want to kick you out of my store. I don't want to work with you ever again, right? Because bottom line, there's customers that are just really challenging to work with, and they're not worth the time and energy that you're spending on them. And so a lot of times we think of this expression, the customer is always right, as this sort of mantra of extensive customer service, of going the extra mile and really making sure that you do everything the customer wants because they're the ones who are always right. Well, I found out last year that this expression actually doesn't mean this. It actually doesn't mean do whatever your customer wants. The expression is actually based in an old meaning of the market will tell you what is valuable or not. And when we use that word market, what we're talking about the environment of buyers. We're talking about the environment of buyers, what they're spending their money on, what they're seeing and deeming as valuable, and what they're also seeing and deeming as valueless. And so when we say the customer is always right, that's actually what we mean. We mean that devoid of all of our excitement, emotion, hype, energy around our product, ultimately, our buyers are going to tell us, are you actually selling something valuable or not, right? And sometimes when I run into entrepreneurs or when I'm giving advice to people, I find people who are super excited about something that they want to sell. Because again, no one willingly is going to sell something that nobody wants. But again, 42% of businesses are going to fail because of this. They're selling something the market does not want. That's almost half of all businesses are selling things that people don't want. And I was thinking about, how does this happen? I think first of all, we have our own biases, and we have people who steer us wrong, family, friends, close loved ones who say, oh my gosh, that's a great idea, you should totally do that. But when it comes to buying the product, they're not the ones lining up. They're not the ones saying, yeah, of course, give me, I want to give you my money. Shut up and take my money. Here, I want it. And so that's why it's so important to get truth tellers around you who can say, you know what, that's a great idea, or you know what, ooh, I don't know if that's a really good idea, right? And so I think, first of all, we have a misunderstanding of the actual value of our product. You have a person who's 1 out of 7 billion people on this planet, and this one person who's creating the product is thinking, yeah, I would buy this. That's why I'm making it. Well, the issue isn't would you buy it. The issue is, would other people buy it? And would enough people buy it that it would actually give you a profitable business, right? And that second one, I think, is pretty important too, because sometimes we get one buyer and we think that that's confirmation that we're absolutely selling things the way we actually have people we can sell to, right? So like, for example, I was working with a guy he runs a leather wristband company. It's an e-commerce shop online, whatever. And he sells leather wristbands. And we were talking about his business, and our first part of the conversation was something around the lines of, trying to think of what he was wanting to get help on his website. And he was like, where do you think I should invest money on my website? Should I invest in a marketer? Should I invest in a web designer? I'm thinking about, and he was walking me through a few different things on his webpage. And we're talking it through, and again, he has all these different solutions that he's trying to spend time, energy, and money on, and he's already spent maybe, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 getting this website launched and getting the products launched. And he has all these professional photos, and if you aren't, I was as probably confused as maybe you were in hearing about what this product is. They're leather wristbands. They're kind of like bracelets, and they are these really big, thick armbands or wristbands that. They're leather wristbands, right? And so they has all these different designs of it, different types of leather, and different price points. And he has all these professional models who are modeling these wristbands that I assume, has paid to do all these things. So he's put a lot of money into this. Well, he's made one of the major mistakes that a lot of business owners will make, is that they'll invest they'll invest an incredible amount of resources into something without even confirming that people actually want it. It's actually why, if you've never heard of what an MVP is, it stands for minimum viable product. It stands for, it basically means that you're trying to get as, the shoestrings tied together as best you can so that you can actually get out there and market it and sell it to get an idea of, do people actually want this? It's why you don't if you're building an app, you don't build all the 10 million features you want in it. Instead, you get it up and running, just basically the skin and bones of it. You market it, and then if people are buying you for it, then the market is telling you, hey, you have something of value here. Now's the time to actually go back and invest all the time, money, and resources into it. But what drives me crazy is I meet these entrepreneurs who they put all of this money they have, and it makes me feel bad because it's all rooted in the right emotion, right? It's people who understand you have to spend money to make money, right? I was laughing. I was a friend of mine. We were talking about entrepreneurs who have this mindset of, I want to start this business and I want to take it to this point. Now, how do I do that with $0? And I'm like, I've never met anyone who started a hyper successful business with $0. You have to spend money to make money. So it's all rooted in the right emotion, but it's totally misaligned. I mean, you have people who they're taking their time and energy and they're spending it on a massive website without even knowing that there are even buyers out there. And so I asked him about it, and I said, well, who are your buyers? Well, I have 12 buyers. Okay, out of how many visitors? Out of how many potential customers? Out of about 12,000. And I'm just floored listening to this. I'm thinking, okay, that's What is that? That's 0.1%. That's 0.01%. I don't know. It's low, right? It's totally inconsequential. It's not important. You have basically no buyers out of 12,000 customers. So what that means is right now you have not found a product that the market wants. And so you can do one of two things. You can try to niche down your product. So I'm going to try to sell my product to a very specific demographic. I'm going to market it to these very specific people. So instead of, having something that is directed at, 1 million people, maybe you're niching down to, I'm selling to 15 to 18-year-old guys who also love Tony Hawk. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm top of my head. I have no idea. Does Tony Hawk, does he even, I don't even know if anyone even knows who he is anymore. But so you're niching down because you're trying to really focus on a specific demographic to get an idea of, would this demographic find value in my product? But see, what happens is people, they exert all of this time, energy, and money without even first verifying their product. And so I think the first big takeaway as we talk practically about starting your business or actually scaling your business is you have to verify that you have something of value. That does not mean people who tell you they will buy it. That means hard, actual data of people who bought your product. I was talking to a guy who was talking about his product, and I asked him, have you verified your offering? And he said, yeah, I got 200 people on a newsletter who are all really excited about it. And I said, okay, well, how many of them have you sold to? Well, none. Okay, until you sell to them, it's not a valid offer. It makes me think of my previous firm. They had put together some kind of women in leadership program, and it was something that was designed around training and equipping women in leadership positions. And my CEO, who she has just been a phenomenal person, she talks about in the story about how she went around and asked a lot of the their women customers who they had worked with and asked, is this something you would buy? And they were like, oh yeah, that'd be awesome. Well, so they went through all the work to actually design it and build it and make it, spent all this time, money, and resources on it. And then no one bought it. No one actually wanted it, right? Because there's a difference between actually putting your wallet up for something that you want and then just saying, yeah, I'd like that. Yeah, I'd want that. Well, yeah, of course I'd buy that, right? So the very first, very practical thing, if you're launching your business, you're trying to scale your business, take your MVP, take the get it together as best you can, and then see who will buy it. Try to market to people and see who will actually buy it. It's kind of like where, I have these business cards that I put together on. These business cards cost me like $20. I mean, I got it on Canva.com, and I took a design that was already there, and I changed the title of the company on the business card to my company, Good Advice. Now, will I eventually go back and get like a professional design and like get really awesome business cards? Yeah, I will. Of course I will. But right now, for launching the MVP of my business, I don't need that. The $20 one will do. The Squarespace website that I've spent like an hour and a half on, that's just like a template that you change words on, that one's going to do for now. Where I want to be spending my time and energy is actually getting in front of people and selling to them, building credibility for my business, and actually building revenue that I can then devote back to the business. So as you're thinking that through, as you're processing that, as you're especially thinking about a certain product or certain great business idea that's in your mind, all that matters is what the market tells you. It doesn't matter if you think it's really great. What matters is what the market thinks, right? So you got to get out there. You have to meet people you can sell to. Now, following on to this, point number 2, I mentioned how I wanted to tie back to, we'll tell you what, before I get into that, let me say one other thing on this. As you're thinking about your product, as you're thinking about what you want to offer, and all this was very easy for me because I was working for a firm where I was literally, I charged one company $10,000 for a day. Literally just one day was $10,000 to work with our company. And so you have companies that are spending thousands of dollars to work with us. And so I already knew that what I was off, and that was me as a salesperson. And so I already knew that from a sales perspective that I had something that was valuable to the market. So even when launching my MVP, I already had a lot of really great data that confirmed to me that I wasn't totally screwing over my life by quitting my job and starting my own company, right? I didn't have to have as much anxiety because I already knew I'm offering something that I know people want. I also know that coaching and consulting in general is a multi-billion-dollar business. So again, I already knew that I had something that people wanted. But going back to my conversation on value, and especially this is point number 2, if you have found something that is your offering, you have to be able to own the value of that and assert it to people you're selling to. Here's a good way to think of this. I had someone describe it to me this way, and they said, what's the difference between the $10,000 coaching program and the $1,000 coaching program? And my first answer was, well, I guess the $10,000 person is someone who's a lot more experienced. And that may be true. That may be absolutely true. It could be someone who really is that much more experienced. But the person answered back to me, they said, wrong. It's all perception of value. The $10,000 person is able to communicate and convince and sell better than the $1,000 person can. And I think what's really fascinating on this conversation of value is I find people who will undersell themselves consistently because it's almost like they feel really guilty having people give them their money, right? It's like, and I think it's because a lot of people are just, we have just really altruistic behaviors. We have really honest behaviors. And so, and frankly, we're the biggest criticizers of ourselves. And so it's really hard to stand in front of someone and say, yeah, this is what this is worth, right? But I see this happen a lot with people who are, or take, for example, there was a woman I was working with who she's a wedding designer, and she does all of the wedding decorations, and she's incredibly gifted. I was looking through some pictures that she had put up. I was looking through some of her photos, and I thought, oh my gosh, this person's amazing. And I always do that on the front end because, I want to know, does this person actually have something of value? And so we're talking it through. We're talking about her business, and she's saying, I'm really having a tough time. And I said, well, tell me about your customers. And she's talking about just these awful horror stories of her customers who just really took advantage of her, who really did not give good reviews to her, and which shocked me because, again, I'm looking at the photos and I'm thinking, how could this be possible? This looks like some of the most beautiful weddings I've ever seen, right? Well, then she said, well, I gave away my services for free and I paid for the decorations out of pocket. And I thought, okay, there it is. Therein lies the problem. The problem is that you are, by giving away your services for free, you are essentially communicating that your product lacks value. Because think of it this way. If I called you and I was going to, let's say I was going to coach you, or I was going to give you some advice in your business, and then I added on, and you know what, it's going to be totally free, what would your first thought be? Your first thought would be, well, why is it free? This person must not be any good. If this person was any good, they wouldn't have to give it away for free. It's kind of like I was talking to a guy he's a web designer. He has a web design business. And he approached me and said, hey, I would love to revise your website for free. And I said, really? Well, tell me about yourself. And he talked about this huge portfolio. He was like, I've worked with these major businesses. I've designed these major websites. I've been part of he said something like a $20 million firm where I was the internal web design, and all this incredible stuff. And I thought, really, I just couldn't help but think BS, right? Because I thought, if you've done all of those things, if you have this incredible portfolio, why are you giving away your work to total strangers for free? So either you're lying about the background or you really aren't as good as you say you are. And that's why I think it's so essential. You have to be able to own it and really communicate to people, this is what it costs. And the best news is that will filter out people that you actually want to work with and those that you do not. Trust me, you do not want to work with the penny pincher person who complains about every fee, every charge, everything. You don't want to work with that person, right? And it's kind of wild how the people who spend more money and are willing to spend more money, they have a much more respectful, professional approach and just relationship with you than the people who are trying to nickel and dime you, right? And so in thinking that through, ultimately, the quality of customers you want is going to be directly related to how well you own your price to people. So like, for example, when someone comes and works for me, it is multiple $1,000s. It isn't like $200 and we'll work together. Or I had one guy who offered to pay me $50 an hour and I said, no, I don't do that. Sorry, no, I don't do that. Now, that's not because I have ego or because I'm just unwilling to help people. It's simply because I understand that people's value, the easiest way to dictate that value in me is through price. So for you, this is, I guess, point number 2, or the second big takeaway from today, is you have to be willing to assert your value to people. And ultimately, I got into a conversation with a guy about this the other day, and I disagreed with him, but then now as I'm thinking through it, I think this person was actually onto something. Because he said, if you have a problem with, because someone asked the question, what gives me the right, and I think she was selling some kind of real estate, I don't know what it was, and she was charging like $500, and it was like some kind of program or something she was selling. It was $500, and she was saying kind of in out of this begrudging heart of, what gives me the right to charge someone $500? I mean, how dare I charge $500 when, it really doesn't take that much time or effort on my part? Which, by the way, I mean, it's not about time. It's about outcomes, right? It's what you're guaranteeing is what you will give them in return, right? And so it's kind of like when you go to the dentist, or I had a cyst on my back that had, I know, really gross, right? I had to get a cyst removed on my back. It was a 30-minute procedure, and it was $750. So it's less about the timeliness. Now, I guess I could have gone back to the doctor and said, hey, can you actually just dig around back there for 5 hours just so I feel like I get my money's worth? Or I can understand that the cost to get that outcome and get it done well, where my back's not like totally mutilated, it's going to cost $750, right? Same thing's true about the dentist. To get a cavity filled, it's like 30 or 45 minutes. Now, do you really want to ask the dentist to spend 5 hours in your teeth? Probably not, right? So it's all about the outcome that you're promising. But this person asked this question, and this guy that I get into a discussion with, he says, that is extremely dishonest of you. He said, this is your problem. You're being extremely dishonest and you're lacking integrity. And I jumped in and I was kind of, okay, that's kind of harsh. I mean, she's not like murdering someone. She's not taking advantage of her customers. In fact, she's trying to do the opposite. She's trying to do the right thing. How could that be a lack of integrity? And his name was Hunter. And so Hunter responds, he says, the reason it's a lack of integrity is because she is going to try to sell a product to people that she doesn't even fully believe in herself. That's a lack of integrity. She's going to try to sell something to people that she doesn't even feel like is really worth that much. And if you're going to have integrity in business, whenever you sell to someone, you have to truly, honestly believe that it's actually worth that much. And so as you're selling, as you're asserting your value, you got to really believe it. Even if you're faking it till you make it, you got to really believe it. And the third thing that I'll say, and again, these are just really practical, quick and dirty tips for you and your business. And again, all this is just born out of, I keep having these same conversations with entrepreneurs. And so the third thing is, whatever you're thinking about selling, for the love of God, make it easy on yourself and pick something that's at least a little bit relevant. Just a hair relevant. So like print media, for example. I was talking to a guy. He's wanting to start a flyer design business. He has a print shop, or I think he's acquiring a print shop, and he wants to be the source for companies that are printing flyers, salespeople who are printing flyers. Now, it's not a terrible idea. I mean, there's certainly a market for it, but it would be like someone starting a business restoring VHS tapes. Is there a market for it? Absolutely. Could you find customers? Absolutely. But out of all of the options for my future business, am I going to choose something from 30 years ago, or am I going to, which, and by the way, this industry is shrinking every day. They aren't making new VHSs. Or am I going to choose something that allows me to have my niche, to compete, to stand out in the competition? Which is it going to be, right? And so as you're thinking about your future product, choose something you can be unique in, and I literally mean that. You can actually be unique in, that you actually have a fighting chance for, and then some kind of industry that it's not going to die in the next 10 years. Like the funeral business, that's not going anywhere, right? I mean, people are going to keep dying. I don't think that's going to change. So if someone comes to me and says, I want to start my funeral business, I'm not going to say, man, I'm really worried about your future. I mean, maybe I'm worried about the person. I don't know. I don't know the kind of people who like eagerly seek this out. But here's a good way to think of it. I was talking to someone who he wants to become a real estate agent. Man, there's a lot of real estate agents out there. A lot of real estate agents. And I'm not knocking the profession. I'm just saying there's a lot of real estate agents, and he's coming right out of college. He's going right into the field. He's a pretty extroverted person, and I'm giving him advice and saying this is what you got to do, and this is some ways to think of it. But man, I'm nervous for you because there are so many realtors around here, and the market is hot. It's not going to be hot forever, right? And so when you find yourself frustrated as to why can't I drum up any business, well, when the competition is all over the place, you throw a stone in any direction and you hit a competitor, that causes you to have to elevate your business to the next level, where you have to offer better prices, or you have to, invest in your marketing budget even more so people even know who you are. So for the love of everything that's good and holy, if you're going to start your business, try to do something that's easier for you to set yourself apart and stand out, rather than something that is already saturated. So taking all that, wrapping it all up in a nice, neat little package, you have to be able to understand, am I offering something that customers want? Am I standing out where people know who I am? And am I communicating my value to people? Am I actually communicating the value, or am I trying to give away my services for free? And which, by the way, it's okay to do something like a swap, right? It's okay to say, hey, I'll give you my services for free if in return you will give me a testimonial that I can put on my website, or you will, if it legitimately helps you, or I'll give you this service for free if I could use your service for free. But someone said it really well to me, and I think I'll always remember it. You will never gain value from undervaluing yourself. I'll say it again. You'll never gain value from undervaluing yourself. As you reduce your value, it will never add value in someone else's mind. Now, it may in a temporary way, people who try to take advantage of you, or people trying to get a quick buck or trying to get a quick opportunity from you, but long term, it'll never add value to you. So make sure you're communicating and you're being assertive about your value. And that's above anything. It's beyond your credibility. That's beyond your age. I was talking to a guy, he's 21 years old. He's selling a product to restaurants for the restaurant industry. And he said, my biggest problem is that I'm 21 years old. And I said, yeah, in your mind, it's your biggest problem. Don't let it be the biggest problem in your buyer's mind. You have to assert to people that you have something of value that they want. Otherwise, if you're passive, they're going to think all the things you're worried about them thinking, right? So that's what I got today, guys. I feel a little bad. It wasn't really a motivational episode, but I wanted to really drill down and get some really practical stuff for you, especially those of you, my listeners, who you already have a business, you're launching a business. I want to give you some things that will actually help you avoid some of the trip mines that people continuously run into. Don't be that person that's part of the 42%. Make sure you verified, make sure it's something of value, and then all you got to do is communicate that value, and you'll have something that turns out to be a sustainable business. I'll catch you guys later. Thanks for your support. If you have any questions, comments, or you have any kind of feedback, you can always email me, Blake@goodadvicecoaching.com. I'll see you later, guys. Bye-bye.